So I'm going to discuss the Holy Trinity of Wokedom. So the first question is, what is woke? Have you got a definition for woke?
Uh,
Top of your head, nice and simple.
mine is anti-white, anti-European.
Right.
That's my definition for woke. Because generally, as far as I see it, woke is less particular ideas and more a coalition of people who exist either outside of the mainstream, that being, or did exist outside of the mainstream, that being the alphabet lobby
Yep.
and other such groups, and then foreigners who've been imported into the country, like Muslims and such, to form a coalition against the people who are native to European countries as a way for politicians to maintain power. That's how I see it.
No, nice and simple.
It's evil, but it's
Yeah.
simple.
But for me, the simple version of woke is it's basically political correctness on steroids. It's just the natural progression of what we had in the 80s and 90s of political correctness. It's just been advanced, and social media has pushed it even further along the line. Now, I've got quite a bit of experience in this from growing up. I remember the first bits of political correctness I can remember. First one was from the 70s. I was in primary school, went swimming one day. I used to have long hair. And I wore my sister's swimming cap because I didn't want to get it wet and then have wet hair all day. And there's no such thing as air dryers and lockers, nothing like
This all
that.
sounds very 80s so
But
far. I
the
must be
70s.
honest. Oh, 70s. Oh, yes.
Yes, we're looking at mid 70s. So when the teacher saw me put my sister's head swimming cap on, she stopped the whole class and went, "See what Nick's doing? That's fantastic because it's not only girls who wear shower caps and swimming caps. And for Nick to be able to do that in class, that's fantastic. He can have 20 house points." What she was basically saying was breaking down gender norms in my class
I thought
at
lots of
a
people.
primary
I
school.
thought lots of men had long hair in the 70s, though.
Yeah, it was a trendy thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it wasn't
And
about having.
some say my hair is too long now as well.
Yeah.
I've not had a haircut in a bit.
But she was just pointing out to the rest of the class that boys can wear swimming caps and it's not a girly thing to do. It's a gender thing. And I remember in the 80s, demonstrations on Green and Common about the nuclear weapons the Americans were importing there to protect us from the USSR. And that was all about feminist groups setting camps up. And it was what you see now with the feminists of today, pink hair, half mental, doing the same sort of thing.
Only half?
Well, I would say half.
Okay. Oh, you're
Half
being
mental.
fair.
Yeah, I mean fair. So this is not a new thing. This has been going on for my lifetime. It just changes and morphs into something slightly different. Um, we're becoming more progressive, more woke, more equal. We've got more stuff. We're all richer, even though there's still bits of poverty. We're all richer than we've ever been. Are we any happy? Are we any happier? Is any of this working? And the answer is obviously not. 1 in 5 women are on antidepressants. Suicide is the biggest killer of males under 50. So it's like none of it's working. Why isn't it working? Because none of these ideas actually produce a better society. It just fragments society into Christians against Muslims, gays against straights, blacks against whites. And you cannot build a harmonious community or country when you're fragmenting people all the time. Is there a reason for that? Well, we all know the reason. It's all about revolution, and we're going to get to that in a little while. So, every religion has a holy book, and wokedom now, I think, is almost like is a religion basically, and it has 3 tenets. The first book, if we can have the first image,
I'll bring that up
second
for you.
image, yep,
There we
that's
go.
it, is what everyone's heard of: critical race theory. Now, we all Black Lives Matter a huge debt of gratitude for this because up to 2020, no one had heard of critical race theory. Nobody knew any of this was going on. It was only through BLM, and that, and when I say BLM, it's a corrupt, failed international con. Nothing good about BLM, but it brought all this to the public's attention. And it talks about being anti-racist. Now, when anyone says anti-racist, what they mean is racist. If you're an anti-racist, it means you are a racist. That's the only description I can come up with being an anti-racist. And at the moment, we live in a society where everything is racist. The Mayor of London was saying last week the air in London is racist.
Did he actually?
That's what he actually
I
said
mean,
was
Sadiq Khan has said some very silly things.
black and brown people in London are suffering more with polluted air than white people in London
Okay.
because the dirty air only goes in the mouths of black and brown people, and the clean air saves itself until a white person is walking past and it shoots in their mouth. And
Okay, I can imagine what that's about, which is that the areas in which, because these people, they come into the country and they form ethnic
yeah,
enclaves, especially when they come in the numbers, and especially in a city like London, which is no longer majority English. So they'll form their ethnic enclaves, and I imagine the areas that they live in are more polluted
yeah,
than areas where the white people live in. Which to me, that just sounds like a way for Sadiq Khan to justify extending the ULEZ programs, which everybody
yeah.
hates. And even Labour hate, even the Labour MPs who are operating in London, from the reports that I've seen recently, absolutely despise the ULEZ programme because they know it's ridiculously unpopular.
But now, if you disagree with ULEZ in London, after that information is giving you,
Now you're racist.
now you're obviously a racist because you don't care about black and brown people. But everything's racist. Chess is now racist. Classical music, um, reading, being punctual is racist
I remember
because
that
black
one.
people cannot be punctual. So it's racist to be punctual. Trains are racist. Last week, cricket is racist. Everything can be classed as racist now. And it all goes back to critical race. I mean, it sounds a bit silly, but it's actually in the tenets of critical race theory. And what it means is racism is happening all the time. So it's not, the question is, did racism happen? That's not the question. The question is, where and how did racism manifest itself in that situation? Because racism is everywhere. And if you can't see the racism, it means you're a racist. You've got to look and find where it is. It's always lurking, it's always there. And there's a great description of this. A black man and a white man walk into a shop at exactly the same time. You've heard this.
I think I've heard this one
At
before. Yeah.
exactly the same time. The shopkeeper looks at both of them. Who does he serve first? The white man or the black man? If he served, who would you serve first?
Either way, it's going to be racist.
Yes. So if he serves the white man first, that's because he sees white people as more superior and they deserve a better service. Oh, if he serves the black man first, it's racist because he doesn't want a black man not being served first and wandering around the shop because he could be stealing things.
Yeah,
So
I was trying to remember what the
Yeah.
stupid reason for it being. Oh, if you choose the black guy first, why that one's racist?
yeah.
Because that was the most ridiculous to me when I heard this.
But it explains critical race theory perfectly, as in racism happening every minute of every day, and you've got to find out where it is. And if you can't see it, you're part of the problem, and you are the racist.
Well, the interesting thing for me in that scenario that's established is no matter, like you say, no matter the decision that is made, it's not that you are the racist because it will be applied differently to the type of person who the question is directed at. So if you wouldn't ask that question of a black person, but if it's a white person in the situation, then you will be the villain no matter what. It's a way for me. A lot of this comes down to villainizing white people constantly in every scenario,
Oh, absolutely.
and also affirmative action as well. In the US, was shown to have also disproportionately negatively affected Asian applicants into universities like Harvard as well.
Yeah.
So anybody who has a particular cultural standard of living, then they get victimized by this and made to feel terrible and made to feel as though they're evil 24/7
Yeah.
just for their existence and their history.
And that's what critical race theory does. My last point on this is if you deny you're a racist, because all white people are racist, they just don't know they're racist. There's different levels of racism in every white person, according to critical race theory. If you deny you're a racist, it's a little bit like the witch trials in medieval England. So you ask a woman, "Are you a witch?" And she says, "No." So you put her in a pool of water. If she floats, it means she's a witch. So you burn her. If she sinks and drowns, it means she wasn't a witch. So there's no good outcome for that poor woman whatsoever.
You've seen Monty Python and the Holy
Yes.
Grail, right? It just makes me think of that situation at the beginning of the film where
Yeah.
they weigh the woman against the duck.
Yeah.
And she weighs more than a duck, therefore she's a witch. How are you so learned in the ways of science? It's that kind of stupid logic.
But when I first saw that, I just thought that was Monty Python being silly. It
They
turns
were
it,
being prophetic.
they were basing it on what used to happen in medieval England, where you would try to drown the woman. If she survived, you burnt her for being a witch. If she drowned to death, then she wasn't a witch. And it's like, that's what critical race theory is, that every white person's a racist.
Yeah, and before we get off the critical race theory, I just need to go into salesman mode for a
Right.
very quick moment, which is that on the website on lotuseaters.com, we've got lots of content covering critical race theory. Carl's the one who covered a lot of it. He's got an entire series explaining critical race theory. I think that's somewhere between 5 and 10 episodes long. And then he also did a video called, because I know that what you were talking about there from the, it's not if racism happened, it's how did it manifest itself in a situation. That's from Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility.
Yeah.
He's got a video talking about a conservative's guide to Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. So if you want to find those on the website, I don't remember exactly if they're premium or not. I imagine some of them premium. So check that out on the website if you're interested in learning more about critical race theory as well.
No, absolutely, because I'm only going to skim over some of these trinities of wokedom. The next one is gender theory. We can have the next slide up. So gender theory is taught in universities. You know, you can do this. Gender theory came out of women's studies in the 60s. Then it turned into gender studies. And then a sidearm morphed into gay and lesbian studies.
So what you're telling me, this is all a gigantic mistake that's come from trying to understand women.
No one can understand women.
Exactly.
Women don't understand women. So I started in universities, and it was really started for white, bored, educated, ungrateful middle class women who couldn't achieve what they wanted to achieve based on their merit. So then had to find an excuse. It was obviously my gender. It's because I'm a woman. Someone's holding me back. And that's how it started, gender theory. And we know that's not correct. It's been assisted by men. None of this could have happened without weak men supporting this.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. And then you have to say, why do weak men support this? And it's because it's one of the ways they can potentially gain access to sex. So if they can, it's a mating strategy. So if they can support these half delusional women, and then we're halfway getting dates, halfway being their partners, halfway getting married, halfway to sex. And it's a mating strategy. Men will do almost anything for access to sex. I've laughed at so many girls' jokes in the past, told them they were beautiful, told them they were funny, lied out of my back
Dobbing
teeth.
yourself in, are you?
Yes,
Yeah,
just
fair.
because that's what men will do. And it's part of our strategy.
I have seen men debase themselves in the past on behalf of getting female attention. So any bloke who's watching this video right now, you know you've done it.
We've all done it.
You know what you did.
And do you know what? It's fine because every man's done it over the last 100,000 years. So there's nothing to be shameful about it. That's what we do to impress women. We're always trying to impress women. And so we will lie to them sometimes. Does my bum look big in this? Well, I'm not going to answer that question truthfully, am I?
Well, that's a difficult question now because beauty standards have flipped. I don't know if you want a yes or a no to that question anymore.
There is no yes or no to it. The answer is, I don't know because you always look beautiful.
Oh my! You've practiced that. You've said that so many times. The sincerity I got from his eyes and
Exactly. So gender theory goes into there's no such thing as a man, no such thing as a woman. We're basically born as empty vessels, and then society and cultural norms impose things upon us. And then as children, we start going down to the path then of being a man or being a woman. But at the beginning, we were empty vessels, and we know that's not true. All the evidence is in. Social scientists have done experiments with boys and girls. They're born as a boy or a girl. If you've got children, you can tell straight away the boys and the girls, and it's built in us. There's such things as biological sex, and the brain makeup for those sexes are there. And for people who don't understand this, you just need to ask people, what is a woman? Because that gets you the answer. And people who believe in gender theory will say, well, a woman is anybody who says they're a woman. But what is that? Well, it's a woman. But what is a woman? Anybody who says. It's a circular argument. They cannot answer what a woman is because they don't know themselves. They just don't want to upset anybody because gender theory has convinced 50 years of women that they're the same as men. They're not the same as men. That's why they're unhappy. 20% are taking antidepressants. and our marriages are failing. We're bringing up children worse. Women are very unhappy compared to men. Women's happiness have been declining since the 1960s, decade upon decade, and it's because we're making women do things that men do. But women need to do the things women need to do to succeed and have a fruitful
Well,
life.
I've seen those graphs that you're referring to, and it's interesting that when contrasted with graphs of men, men have got a few dips here and
Yeah,
there, but they generally report pretty much the same happiness that
yeah,
they always have done.
yeah.
Men are more than happy to, if society tells men, "We hate you, go away," men will go, "All right, okay, I'll lock myself away in a room, I'll play video games all day, and I'll be pretty much content as long as as long as nobody's asking anything else of me."
It's not so much a pretty much content. It was because men, and especially young men, are already unhappy. Men have to earn their happiness,
Well,
and men
it's
start
true.
off at a disadvantage. Men start off with nobody wanting them, physically weaker, not being attractive, having no status, having no resources. Girls their age are going out with 25-year-olds with cars. It's difficult being a young man. Men get happier over time. Women become less happier. Women are born happy with everything, and their happiness declines when their looks go, their reproductive cycle diminishes. So they become unhappy unless they've got children and grandchildren. So men are used to knocks in life because that's what we always get. How many women have men walked up to us for a day or chat up and they go, "Nope, not interested." And we've got to take that on the chin. We've got to then find someone else to ask because women don't go around asking men for dates. They don't take it on the chin.
Well, I don't, my missus asked me out, so
I'm not saying it never happens.
I'm just the exception.
Yeah, but most men have to chase women. There's
Yes.
always exceptions. I mean, you're extraordinarily beautiful. So no wonder she came and asked you. So,
Well, thank you very
yeah,
much.
well, if we can have the next slide.
Yeah, I'll pop that up. There we go.
The next theory out of this trinity is queer theory. And this is the most complicated. This is the most bats crazy out of all of them.
Well, I can say from my own experience because I've done research into this.
Yeah.
Connor's done research. Connor has read that 900-page, however so long book by
Wow.
Simone de Beauvoir, and has read some of the founding texts of queer theory that come from people like Gail Rubin and Judith Butler. A lot of it, the purpose of the queer theory is to make no sense in the first
Yeah.
place, because that's the whole thing. It's supposed to be taking the rules that society is operating by and tears them up. That's the
Yeah.
whole point of it in the first place.
Exactly. So I'm glad you said that because it's part of the postmodern creations we had from the 60s. The people who talk about queer theory don't understand queer theory, and they only talk about it because it makes them sound intelligent because nobody else understands it either. It's about taking all the social norms, everything we believe is fact, and saying, no, it's not. These things aren't true. Though, pardon me, these things are only true because you think they're true. But when you look at it through a postmodern lens, they're not true. It destroys everything. And one of the biggest things, it's about breaking down barriers. And one of those barriers is the barrier between adults and children. We treat children differently to adults. We always have done. Hopefully, we always will do. Queer theory says there is no barriers between children and adults. They're the same. They're just smaller versions. That's why we're now looking at. Oh, you've heard of the frame maps. Minor attractive.
Is a disgusting term.
So, if people don't know what maps is a new word for pedos. So we can't use the word pedo anymore because it's offensive to the pedos. So we have to use maps. So it stands for minor attracted persons, and that comes under queer theory because their philosophy is why are we dictating to young people when they can have sex, when they can enter romantic relationships? Why have we said 16 in this country, 18 in Turkey, 15 in France? I think it's 13 in Spain or something.
Is it?
Yeah. Um, why do we have these arbitrary numbers that society just said that's the age limit? Who are we to dictate and persecute an 11-year-old who, and that's what queer theory does on many levels, not just about sex. That's why we have a body positivity movement now. Who are we to say that Lizzo isn't the most beautiful woman in the world? She's the size of a hippo. She's got a pretty face, and she's a talented musician. I don't like her music, but
I
people
wouldn't
buy
agree
it.
with pretty face, but
She's got a pretty
if
face.
you've got your opinion.
Well, I just said you got a pretty face. You didn't disagree with that, did
Why?
you?
Why would I? There you go. No, you are right. She's relatively musically talented in terms of the instruments she can play. As disgraceful as it was, she got the opportunity to play. Was it?
The glass flute.
Yeah, the glass flute. Was that John Adams, one of the founding fathers, I believe? And she presumably played it very well. I think she's classically trained.
Oh.
I hate her music, but I'm sure if you got her on a flute, then she'd be very good at it.
Yeah, but she sells enough record for me to say she's talented. I don't like her music, but she's obviously talented. People spend money on her. But that's not the point. The point is she's now told she's beautiful because that's body positivity. That's queer theory saying there's no such thing as a standard beauty. There's no such thing as a perfect hourglass figure is the most beautiful. You can be any size, any shape, and you're still beautiful because that's queer theory. There's no more social norms. Now, what we risk with queer theory is when we tear down social norms, how do we live our lives? The only reason me and you can have this interview is because subconsciously we know what we can do and what we can't do. I know there's no fear of you standing up and punching me. You know there's no chance of me suddenly turning into a Nazi and screaming Hitler propaganda down the lens. There's certain things.
I'm very glad to hear that.
But they're the
Thank you.
social norms. If it wasn't for our social norms, we couldn't have a conversation because we have no idea what the other person's going to do or say. And that's why society at the moment is beginning to crumble and break down because we can't walk into a neighborhood now and know we're safe because we don't know if this is a neighborhood we can be safe. We don't interact with certain people because we don't know how to react with their conversations. It's very damaging. It's taken us to Mogadishu, where nobody knows how it works, but it just crumbles. That's the dangers of queer theory. And then going back, my final point on queer theory is this is not new. We had a group in the 1970s called PI, the Paedophile Information Exchange, and they were lobbying government to reduce the age of consent to 3 for sex.
Yes, and I've done some research on them myself. The first thing was there was a big scandal that came out about 10 years ago where it came out that the Home Office had thrown them a bit of money.
Yes, they had. They got a grant.
Yes, in the early 1980s, I think they got about £50,000 through a grant from the government. So the government was actively giving money to the Paedophile Information Exchange. Also, there was the issue with, I forget the name of the organization, but it was a liberal free speech organization. Liberty, that was the name of the organization, yes, that included Harriet Harman, who later went on to be part of Tony Blair's government. They were actively defending the right of PI to exist as an organization within the UK and worked with them.
Yeah.
Very disturbing to know all of that happened.
Yep. And we think that can never happen again. It's happening now. Our government now are throwing money to these organizations. It's all government funded, a lot of it, through EDI and through the woke agenda. We're just repeating history again. Queer theory is the most dangerous out of all the theories. So where does all this lead? Quickly, I'll wind up. Well, where does it lead? Critical race theory leads us to a place where we don't want to communicate and engage with people of different races because we don't want to be accused of racism. We don't know how they'll perceive us. So it means we stop talking to brown and black people and they stop talking to us in case we're racist. It breaks down communities. Gender theory, where does that lead us to? Well, it leads us to young women having their breasts amputated at the moment. That's where gender theory takes us to. And then queer theory, that takes us to the sexualization. And basically, I won't, in case you can't publish it, the sexualization of children. That's where that takes us to. Why are we pushing these theories? Why are they pushing these theories? Because they want a better world. A better world. Today is the best the world has ever been. It will only get better tomorrow. It's never been better than it is now. We've never been richer, healthier, more food, more resources, more comfort. I'm talking about the whole world. The poorest people in Africa are better off today than they were 100 years ago. We live in utopia now. But what happens is some people don't think this is good enough. And we got the last slide. Some people, normally fat, blue-haired, woke university lesbians. I'm not saying she's any of those things apart from the blue hair. I just thought it was a good
fat
photo.
as well.
From the camera angle, yes.
Yeah, it's the camera angle, I'm sure.
Some people think they can do better. Some people say, let's tear it all down because what we have at the moment is terrible and we can start again from scratch. It's taken us 100,000 years to get where we are today. And people like her think they can do it in a couple of years.
Sorry, she's staring at me.
If she's not one of those people, then I apologize. I just found the picture.
She might be a lovely person.
And thought it was a great picture with this, the grimace and everything. But we make changes, small, tiny tweaks to our community and our society, not by tearing it down, burning it to the ground, and starting again with a Marxist revolution. So be wary of the Trinity of Wokedom.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Symposium series, this episode on existentialism and authenticity. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.